If you think you know what hell looks like, you haven't been to La Sabaneta. What happened inside these walls in January 1995 will haunt you long after this video ends. The emergency call came through to the Maracaibo Police Department at 4:37 a.m. on January 3, 1995. Detective Carlos Mendoza was on his night shift when the dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio, almost drowned out by screams in the background. All units, mass casualty event at La Sabaneta Prison. Unknown number of dead. National Guard requests immediate assistance. Carlos and his partner, Detective Ana Rojas, raced to the scene. They'd seen horrors in their decade on the force, but nothing prepared them for this. La Sabaneta Prison was built for 700 inmates, but held over 3,000. It wasn't run by guards. It was ruled by gangs, a brutal hierarchy where the weak simply vanished. As they approached, the smell hit them. Burning rubber, gasoline, and something else, burning flesh. The main gate was open. National Guard soldiers streamed out, carrying wounded inmates. Blood covered the ground. Screams echoed from inside. Captain Eduardo Silva of the National Guard met them, his uniform soaked in blood, his face ashen. "Thank God you're here," he said. "It's a massacre." A full-scale war broke out around midnight. By the time we got authorization to intervene, it was too late. "How many dead?" Ana asked. Silva's eyes were hollow. "We've stopped counting. Over 60 confirmed. But there are entire cell blocks we haven't accessed yet. The inmates barricaded themselves inside. We're hearing gunfire." "Detective, this isn't a riot. This is genocide." Carlos and Ana knew they had to go in, despite the danger. 20 minutes later, they walked through the gates into a vision of hell. The central yard was a war zone. Bodies lay scattered, some burned beyond recognition, others hacked with machetes or shot. The ground was littered with homemade weapons, pipe guns, sharpened metal knives, clubs studded with nails. But it wasn't random violence. The bodies were clustered in specific areas. Certain cell blocks had been systematically targeted. This was a planned execution. Near cell block C, a message was spray-painted in what looked like blood: "The purge has begun. The weak will be cleansed. Only the strong remain." They moved deeper, escorted by guardsmen. In one cell, they found 7 bodies piled on top of each other, all with identical stab wounds. In another, evidence of fire suggested inmates had been burned alive. Carlos documented everything, but one question burned in his mind. Why? The answer waited in cell block D, the territory of the prison's most powerful gang, Los Leones. Standing in a doorway, covered in blood but uninjured, was Rafael El Tigre Vargas, the undisputed king of La Sabaneta. He smiled when he saw the detectives. "Welcome to my kingdom," he said calmly. "I suppose you're here to ask questions. There is no order here, detectives. There never was. Last night, I simply made that fact clear." "You did this?" Ana asked, her hand moving toward her weapon. "I liberated this place," El Tigre corrected. "We had weak men polluting our ranks. Informants. Traitors. Last night, my loyalists and I identified every one of them. And we removed them." Carlos felt sick. "You murdered over 60 people because you deemed them weak?" 62, to be precise, El Tigre said. "Though I suspect the final count will be higher." "You're confessing to mass murder," Carlos said, raising his camera. El Tigre's smile widened. "Arrest me? Detective, look around. I control La Sabaneta. I always have. And last night, I simply solidified that control." Just as Ana stepped forward, gunfire erupted from the upper tier of the cell block. Carlos pulled her to cover as bullets ricocheted off the walls. When he looked up, El Tigre was gone. "Fall back. Everyone out. Now," the squad leader shouted. They retreated under fire. By the time they reached safety, 3 guardsmen were wounded. The prison was erupting into violence again. Captain Silva met them at the gate. "We're sealing the prison. Nobody in, nobody out." As the massive steel gates closed, Carlos stared at the smoke rising from the prison. El Tigre had identified and eliminated 62 specific people in a prison of 3,000. That required detailed intelligence, coordination, and information he shouldn't have been able to get, unless someone on the outside was helping him. Carlos pulled Ana aside. "We need to investigate the guards. The administrators." Someone fed El Tigre information. Just then, Ana's phone rang. Her face went pale. "Carlos, we have a problem. The warden of La Sabaneta, Antonio Fuentes. He didn't show up for work this morning." His family reported him missing 2 hours ago. When was the last time anyone saw him? Yesterday evening. He left his office, said he had a meeting, never came home. They stared at each other. The warden of Venezuela's most violent prison had vanished just hours before the worst massacre in its history. We need to find Fuentes, Carlos said. Right now? Because either he's a victim or he's a conspirator. And either way, he holds the key to what really happened last night. What Carlos didn't know was that finding Warden Fuentes would lead them into a conspiracy reaching the highest levels of the Venezuelan government. A conspiracy where the prison was just the beginning, where El Tigre was merely a pawn, and where the real power players were orchestrating chaos for far more sinister purposes. If the warden was involved, if guards were corrupted, if the entire system was compromised, then who was really in control? And how many more? Warden Antonio Fuentes' house was modest, a suburban home in Maracaibo. His wife, Maria, sat on the steps, her eyes red. She told us her husband got a call last night. His face went pale. He said it was urgent prison business, promised to be back for dinner, and then just disappeared. Before he hung up, Maria heard a name. Vargas. We exchanged a look. Rafael Vargas, El Tigre, the prison's most powerful inmate. The warden was called about El Tigre just hours before the massacre began. We searched Fuentes' study. In a drawer, I found a ledger. Not an official one, but a handwritten record of transactions. Dates, amounts, initials, and a recurring word, pago, payment. The initials RV appeared next to entries worth thousands of dollars. Rafael Vargas. The warden was taking bribes from El Tigre. But why? The payment dates were strange. They lined up perfectly with major drug and weapon busts at the local port. Ana was confused. Why would El Tigre pay the warden when his shipments were getting seized? Then it hit me. The busts were decoys. Sacrificial shipments to keep law enforcement busy while the real product moved through other routes. The warden was paid to look the other way. Mrs. Fuentes broke down. Her husband's salary wasn't enough. About 3 years ago, their money troubles vanished. He told her he got a bonus. She never questioned it. She just sobbed, asking what he had done. My phone rang. It was Captain Silva. They'd found a body near the prison. A warden's uniform. We raced to the scene. It was Antonio Fuentes. He'd been brutally executed. Stab wounds, throat cut. But his eyes, they had been removed. Ana said it was a message. He saw too much. Or, I added, he was going to talk. Silva told us more inmates who survived the massacre were being systematically killed inside. El Tigre was cleaning house. But how? With the prison on lockdown. Silva admitted some guards might be compromised. I corrected him. Not possible. Certain. If the warden was corrupt, how many guards were too? La Sabaneta wasn't just a prison. It was a criminal headquarters. Then, a text from an unknown number. Stop investigating or you'll join Fuentes. Your only warning. They were watching us. They knew we had the ledger. We were running out of time. We had to find out who El Tigre reported to. A prison gangster doesn't run an international drug operation alone. Back at headquarters, we dug deep. Hours of research pointed to one intermediary between the prison gang and the Colombian cartels, General Ricardo Montoya, the commander of the National Guard responsible for prison security. The man who could control access, guards, everything. It made perfect, terrifying sense. We weren't just investigating a massacre. We were uncovering a conspiracy at the highest levels of Venezuela's government. That night, driving home, a black SUV pulled up. The window rolled down. I saw the barrel of an assault rifle. I slammed my car in reverse as gunfire shattered my windshield. They chased me through the streets, bullets flying. I managed to call Ana while swerving through traffic, finally crashing my car through the security barrier of a police station. The SUV sped off. I was alive, but shaken. Ana arrived, her face pale. The ledger from the warden's house was gone from the evidence locker. The photos she took were deleted from the server. They were erasing everything. Then, the final blow. Captain Silva had been relieved of command. General Montoya himself had taken over, declaring the massacre a simple gang war. Case closed. He was shutting us down. We had one option left. Go to the media. Expose everything before they could kill us. Ana knew a trusted journalist. It was a declaration of war, but they had already started it. What we didn't know was how deep this went. Montoya was just middle management. The next morning, the news reported that Isabella Cruz, a journalist known for investigating corruption, was found dead. Apparent suicide. She was the journalist Anna was going to call. They knew our every move. Someone inside our own department was a mole. We were surrounded by enemies, and the clock was ticking faster than ever.
Carlos and Anna knew they couldn't go back to police headquarters. It was a death trap. Someone on the inside was leaking their every move to the conspiracy. Returning now would be suicide. So, they found a small motel on the edge of Maracaibo, a place where no one asks questions. They checked in under fake names, paid in cash, and ditched their phones. No digital breadcrumbs. For 3 long hours, they sat in that dim, stuffy room, piecing everything together from memory. Every single detail from the ledger, every name, every transaction. Carlos, with a pen and a cheap notebook, wrote it all down, his hand cramping. Beside him, Anna sketched out the web of corruption. A spider-esque nest of connections stretching from the notorious La Sabaneta Prison all the way up to the highest echelons of the Venezuelan government. It wasn't hard evidence. Not yet, but it was a start. It was a roadmap. We need someone outside the system, Anna said, breaking the silence. Someone the conspiracy can't touch. Someone they can't scare. Carlos looked up, exhausted. Who? Every journalist we know is either dead or terrified. Every cop we trust could be compromised. Who's left? Anna pulled out a brand new burner phone she'd picked up from a corner store. There's one person, she said. He's not a reporter or a cop. He's a human rights lawyer. His name is Alejandro Reyes. For a decade, Reyes had been documenting the horrors inside Venezuela's prisons. He had connections with international organizations, NGOs, and foreign governments. If anyone could get this story out, beyond the country's borders, it was him. Carlos nodded. It was their only shot. 2 hours later, they were in the basement of a church, a public space with multiple exits. Alejandro Reyes was a thin man in his 50s, whose eyes were tired, the kind of eyes that have seen far too much suffering. He listened to their story without saying a word, just making a few notes, his face growing darker with every name they mentioned. When they finished, he let out a slow breath. General Montoya, he said, the name hanging in the air. Reyes picked up the pages, his eyes scanning the lines of text. He looked up at them, his gaze intense. You understand what you're asking, don't you? Once this story goes international, once the foreign press gets a hold of it, there's no going back. The government will deny everything. They'll brand you as traitors, as CIA agents. They'll say you fabricated the whole thing. Your lives in this country will be over. Anna didn't flinch. Our lives are over anyway, she replied, her voice firm. At least this way, we take them down with us. A slow nod from Reyes. I have contacts at the Washington Post and the Guardian. Both have been investigating corruption in Venezuela. Your testimony and these details. They'll run the story. But I need 24 hours. I need to verify what I can and prepare the ground. Can you stay hidden for that long? We'll manage, Carlos said. But as they left the church, walking back through the darkening streets of Maracaibo, Carlos couldn't shake a chilling feeling. The feeling of being watched. Free. Every shadow seemed to hold a thread. Every passing car felt like it could be carrying assassins. His instincts, honed by years on the force, were screaming at him. And they were right. They were just 3 blocks from the motel when Carlos saw it. The same black SUV from the night before, parked silently at a corner. His hand instinctively went to his weapon. Anna, we need to move now. But it was too late. Before they could even think about running, two more vehicles appeared, screeching to a halt, boxing them in. Men in civilian clothes, but with the unmistakable posture of military operatives, jumped out, their weapons drawn and leveled. In a matter of seconds, Carlos and Anna were surrounded, completely outmaneuvered, trapped. The rear door of the center SUV opened. A figure stepped out into the dim light of the street lamp. It was General Ricardo Montoya. He was a large man in his 60s, with silver hair and a distinguished air. Dressed in an expensive suit that probably cost more than Carlos earned in 6 months, he smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator that has finally cornered its prey. "Detective Mendoza, Detective Rojas," Montoya said, his voice smooth and pleasant, a terrifying contrast to the scene unfolding. "You've been causing quite a bit of trouble. I think it's time we had a conversation." Anna's voice was pure venom. "We have nothing to say to you."
"Oh, I think you do," Montoya replied. "You see, I know about your meeting with Alejandro Reyes. I know about the documents you've prepared. I know about your plans to contact international media. And I'm here to offer you an alternative." Carlos felt his stomach sink. They'd been followed. The conspiracy's reach was even longer than they'd feared. "What alternative?" Carlos asked, buying time while his mind raced through escape options. There were none. "You walk away," Montoya said simply. "Right now? Tonight. You take money, enough to start over anywhere in the world, and you disappear. Forget La Sabaneta. Forget El Tigre. Forget everything you think you've discovered. In exchange, you get to live. And if we refuse?" Ana challenged. Montoya's smile never wavered. "Then you join Warden Fuentes and Isabella Cruz and the dozen other people who've gotten too close to the truth over the years. You become another unfortunate statistic in Venezuela's ongoing crime problem. Detective Mendoza killed in a gang shooting. Detective Rojas found dead in an apparent robbery. Tragic, but ultimately meaningless." Carlos felt rage building inside him. "You're going to kill us either way. Why offer a deal?" "Because I'm a pragmatist," Montoya replied. "Dead detectives create investigations, questions, complications. Disappeared detectives who clearly fled the country with stolen money? That's just corruption. Easy to explain. Easy to control the narrative." "You've thought of everything," Carlos said bitterly. "I've had years of practice," Montoya agreed. "This isn't my first cleanup operation. Won't be my last. The system works. Detectives. Drugs flow north. Money flows south. People in power stay in power. People who threaten that system disappear. It's elegant in its simplicity." Anna's hand was inching toward her weapon. Carlos saw it, saw the calculation in her eyes. She was going to try something desperate. He gave the smallest shake of his head. "Not yet." "Why La Sabaneta?" Carlos asked, trying to keep Montoya talking. "Why use a prison as your distribution hub?" Montoya seemed genuinely pleased to explain. "Because prisons are perfect. They're closed systems with controlled access. Guards and inmates both need money. Bribes work on everyone. And who pays attention to what happens inside prison walls? Who cares if inmates die? They're criminals. Society has already written them off. 62 people died in that massacre," Ana said, her voice shaking with anger. 62 human beings. 62 problems solved, Montoya corrected. El Tigre identified everyone who posed a security risk to our operation. Everyone who might inform, who might cooperate with investigators, who might grow a conscience. And in one night, all those problems disappeared. Efficient. Carlos felt sick. The casual way Montoya discussed mass murder, like it was a business transaction, like human lives were just numbers on a ledger. "So what now?" Carlos asked. "We refuse your offer, and you kill us right here in the street." "Of course not," Montoya said. "That would be messy. No, you're going to come with me voluntarily. We're going to take a drive. And somewhere quiet, somewhere remote, you'll have a tragic accident. A car crash, perhaps. Or maybe you'll be found in a location that suggests you were meeting with criminals and things went wrong. The story will write itself." "And Alejandro Reyes?" Ana asked. "You're going to kill him too?" "Already taken care of," Montoya said casually. "By the time your bodies are found, Reyes will have suffered a fatal heart attack. Tragic for a man his age, but these things happen." Carlos felt despair wash over him. They'd failed. Completely and utterly failed. Montoya had anticipated every move, corrupted every avenue of hope. The conspiracy was too big, too entrenched, too powerful. But then Anna spoke, her voice strangely calm. "You've made one mistake, General." Montoya raised an eyebrow. "Have I?" Anna reached slowly into her jacket, and Montoya's men tensed. But she didn't pull a weapon. She pulled out a small digital recorder. This entire conversation, recorded, and automatically uploading to a cloud server that Alejandro Reyes has access to. Even if you kill us right now, your confession is already out there. Montoya's face went pale, then flushed with rage. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Anna asked. "Test it. Kill us. See what happens when international media receives a recording of a Venezuelan National Guard general confessing to drug trafficking, mass murder, and conspiracy." For the first time, Montoya looked uncertain. His eyes darted to his men, to the device in Anna's hand, back to the detectives. Carlos could see him calculating odds, weighing options. "You're destroyed either way," Carlos said. "But if you let us go, if you surrender yourself, maybe you get a deal. Maybe you testify against whoever's above you in this network. Maybe you get to live in a prison cell instead of dying when the cartels realize you've become a liability." Montoya stared at them for a long moment. Then he laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You think I'm afraid of prison? I own the prisons. And you think I'm the top of this network?" He shook his head. "I'm middle management, detectives. This operation involves senators, ministers, people whose names you wouldn't believe. You've exposed one piece of a machine that's been running for decades. You haven't won. You've just painted targets on your backs that will never go away. Then we'll spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders," Anna said. "But at least we'll have lives. And you'll have a cell in La Sabaneta. How long do you think El Tigre lets you survive once you on the inside as an inmate?" The standoff stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Montoya's hand moved toward his own weapon. Carlos and Anna tensed, ready to die fighting. Then Montoya's phone rang. He answered, listened, his face going from red to white. He hung up without speaking. Alejandro Reyes just held a press conference. Montoya said quietly, almost to himself. "International media. The Guardian. The Washington Post. CNN. He released everything. Your entire investigation, documented prison abuses, the names of everyone involved." He looked at Carlos and Anna with something almost like respect. "You played me. The recording was never the real play. You were just buying time for Reyes to go public." "We're not as stupid as we look," Carlos said. Montoya stood silent for another moment, then gestured to his men. "Let them go." "Sir?" one of the men questioned. "I said let them go," Montoya snapped. "It's over. The story's out. Killing them now just adds 2 more bodies to a scandal that's already exploding." He looked at Carlos and Anna one last time. "You've destroyed my life, my career, everything I've built. I hope you're proud." "We're not proud," Anna said. "We're just doing our jobs." Montoya got back in his SUV without another word, and the vehicles drove away, leaving Carlos and Anna standing alone on the darkening street. They stood there for a long moment, hardly believing they were alive. Then Carlos started laughing, a sound tinged with hysteria and relief. Anna joined him, and for a few seconds, they just laughed at the impossibility of their survival. The aftermath played out over the following weeks. General Montoya was arrested along with 43 other officials, guards, and co-conspirators. El Tigre remained in La Sabaneta. His power structure collapsed, facing murder charges for the massacre. The Venezuelan government launched investigations, promised reforms, made sweeping statements about justice and accountability. But Carlos and Anna knew the truth. They'd exposed one network, but Montoya had been right about one thing. The machine was bigger than any individual. Cut off one head, and another would grow to replace it. 3 months after the scandal broke, Carlos and Anna sat in a small cafe in Bogotá, Colombia. They'd left Venezuela, accepted positions with Interpol's anti-corruption task force, and were trying to rebuild lives far from the country they'd served. Carlos's phone buzzed with a news alert. He read it, then slid the phone across the table to Anna. "Another prison massacre in Venezuela," he said quietly. 53 dead at Taquito prison. They're calling it gang violence. Anna read the article, her expression darkening. "But we know better." "We always know better," Carlos agreed. "The question is, can we do anything about it?" They sat in silence, watching people walk past the cafe, living normal lives free from the darkness Carlos and Ana had witnessed. And Carlos wondered if they'd ever be able to leave that darkness behind, or if it would follow them forever, a shadow they could never escape. The truth was, La Sabaneta had changed them. They'd seen how deep corruption could go, how easily violence became normalized, how the powerful could destroy the weak with impunity. And they knew that somewhere in Venezuela, in dozens of prisons just like La Sabaneta, the cycle was continuing. They'd won a battle, but the war was far from over. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for what we're uncovering next. Hit subscribe, because the next investigation will take you even deeper into places no one else dares to go.